The Ink Eater. Part 1. The Written Word. They say the pen is mightier than the sword, but in Scriptoria, words could kill you. I discovered this truth on my 14th birthday when my mother handed me a book bound in black leather, its pages blank except for a single sentence written in silver ink. To consume is to become. "You're ready," she said, her fingers stained with a dozen different colored inks. "Tonight, you'll eat your first word." My name is Thessa Wordwright, and I'm an ink eater, one of the few who can consume written words and absorb their meaning, their power, their very essence. In a world where the written word has literal magic, where books can trap souls and contracts can bind reality itself, we are both the most valued and most feared. The city of Scriptoria rose around us like a forest of paper and ink. Every building was covered in writing, laws that enforced themselves, prayers that actually reached gods, stories so vivid they bled into reality. The Scriptorium Tower stood at the city's heart, its 1,000 floors housing every book ever written, every word ever penned. And somewhere in those depths, locked in the forbidden archives, were the unmade words, concepts so dangerous that to speak them was to unmake reality itself. "What word will I eat?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. My mother opened the black book to reveal a new page, freshly written in crimson ink. A single word glowed there, pulsing like a heartbeat. "Fire." "Start small," she said. "Elemental concepts. They're easier to digest than abstract ideas. Tomorrow you might eat warmth or light. But tonight you learn what it means to truly understand fire." I reached out, my finger trembling as it touched the page. The word lifted from the paper like steam, forming into a shape, a small flame dancing in the air. I opened my mouth, and the word flew in. It tasted like smoke and destruction and the comfort of a hearth on a winter night. It felt like every candle ever lit, every forest that ever burned, every phoenix that ever rose from ashes. The knowledge flooded through me. I understood combustion at a molecular level, knew the temperature at which different materials ignited, felt the chemical dance of oxygen and fuel. And then I could make fire. I held out my hand, and flames danced across my palm, harmless to me but ready to burn anything I chose. This was power. This was what it meant to be an ink eater. "Good," my mother said, though I saw worry in her eyes. "But remember, Thessa, every word you eat changes you. Consume too many, and you'll forget what it's like to be human. You'll become just words. A walking library with no soul of its own." I barely heard her. I was too entranced by the fire in my hand, by the possibilities. That was 10 years ago. Now I stand in the ruins of what used to be my mother's scriptorium, looking at the message burned into the wall in letters of ash. Asterisk, the unmade words are waking. They hunger. They remember. Asterisk. And below it, a signature I recognize with cold dread, my mother's own, written in her blood. The ink hunters found me an hour later, their armor covered in protective runes that prevented any written magic from affecting them. Captain Vorel, a man whose face looked like it had been carved from old parchment, grabbed my arm. "Thessa Wordwright," he said, his voice formal and cold. "You're under arrest for the unauthorized consumption of forbidden words and suspected involvement in the archive breach." I started, but he wasn't listening. "Your mother, Elara Wordwright, was the head archivist of the Forbidden Collection. 3 days ago, she entered the unmade section alone. She hasn't been seen since. The seals have been broken. 7 unmade words are missing. 7. Gods above and below. 7. The unmade words were concepts that should never have been written down. Things like oblivion, madness, void. Ideas so fundamental and terrible that giving them form gave them power. The first scribes had locked them away after the word wars, when armies of ink-eaters had consumed battle concepts and turned into living weapons. "I don't know where she is," I said truthfully, "but I can find her. I'm her daughter. I know how she thinks, what words she'd—" "You're an ink-eater," Vorel interrupted, "the second most powerful in the city, after your mother, which makes you either our best hope of finding her, or her accomplice." He released my arm and stepped back. "The Council has agreed to a compromise. You'll help us track down the unmade words and recover them. If you succeed, you'll be cleared of all charges. If you fail, or if we discover you're working with your mother—" He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. "I'll need access to the archives," I said, "and my mother's notes. Everything she was working on before she disappeared." Vorel nodded curtly. "You'll have one partner, someone who can keep you honest." A figure stepped from the shadows, a young man about my age, with silver eyes that marked him as a scribe, one of those born with the ability to write words that became reality. But there was something else about him, something that made my skin prickle. "This is Castor Nullwright," Vorel said. "He's a blank. A blank." I'd heard of them but never met one. Scribes who'd been born with the ability to write, but also the curse of erasing. Everything they wrote destroyed itself after being read once. Perfect for keeping secrets. Perfect for undoing magic. "You can trust him," Vorel continued, "because he's the only person in Scriptoria who can destroy an unmade word if you fail to contain it." Castor looked at me with those unsettling silver eyes. "Hello, Thessa," he said, and his voice was like the sound of pages being torn. "I've read a lot about you. Good things, I hope." "Information," he corrected. "I don't deal in judgments, only facts." This was going to be difficult. Part 2. The first word. The Scriptorium archives stretched down into the earth for 7 levels, each one containing progressively more dangerous texts. The first 3 levels were open to scholars, histories, philosophies, scientific treatises. Level 4 required special permission and contained books of practical magic. Level 5 held forbidden knowledge, dark rituals, plague formulas, weapons of words. Level 6 was where they kept books that could drive you mad just by reading them. Level 7 was the unmade section, and that's where Castor and I were headed. The elevator down was old, operated by a chain of linked words that spelled out "descend" in a dozen languages. As we dropped through the levels, I felt the weight of all those books pressing down, millions of words, billions of ideas, all contained and catalogued and controlled. "Your mother was brilliant," Castor said suddenly. "I read her thesis on conceptual linguistics. The way she theorized that words don't describe reality, they create it. Revolutionary." "She was also kind," I said quietly, "and careful. She would never release unmade words intentionally." "People change," Castor replied, "especially ink-eaters. How many words have you consumed, Thessa?" I didn't answer. The number was significant. More than was probably safe. The elevator shuddered to a stop at level 7. The doors opened onto a corridor lit by bioluminescent ink, words that glowed with their own light. Phosphor, radiance, gleam. And at the end of the corridor, the vault door hung open, its 7 seals broken. We approached carefully. The seals hadn't just been broken, they'd been eaten. I could see the tooth marks in the metal, where someone had bitten through the physical manifestation of protective spells. Only an ink-eater could have done this, and only a very powerful one. "She's been here," I whispered, recognizing the bite pattern. My mother had a distinctive way of consuming words, a particular angle to her jaw. Inside the vault, The shelves were mostly intact. Most of the unmade words remained locked in their crystal cases, pulsing with dark energy. But 7 cases stood empty, their lids shattered from the inside. Castor pulled out a notebook and began writing, his silver pen moving quickly. When he finished, he tore out the page and handed it to me. The missing words are hunger, silence, erosion, plague, vertigo, echo, and dissolution. As I read the words, the page crumbled to dust in my hands. Blank magic. 7 conceptual weapons, I said. She could unmake the world with these. Could she? Castor asked. Or would they unmake her? It was a good question. Unmade words were dangerous precisely because they consumed the consumer. Eat the word hunger and you'd become hunger incarnate, never satisfied, always wanting. The more you fed, the hungrier you'd become, until hunger was all you were. We need to find her fast, I said, before the words take over completely. We need to find the words, Castor corrected. Your mother is probably already gone. I wanted to argue, but I'd seen what happened to ink eaters who consumed too much. They became abstractions, living concepts that barely remembered being human. A sound echoed through the vault. Footsteps, but wrong. Too light. Too quick. Someone's here, Castor whispered, pulling out his pen. A figure emerged from between the shelves. At first, I thought it was my mother. Same height, same build, same dark hair. But as it came closer, I saw the truth. It was made of words. Thousands of tiny letters crawled across its skin like insects, forming and reforming sentences. Its eyes were blank pages, its mouth an inkwell, and when it spoke, the voice was made of 1,000 whispered words layered over each other. Asterisk, daughter. You came. Good. You will understand. Asterisk. Mother. I breathed. Asterisk. No longer. I am more. I am becoming. I have eaten the words that unmake. Now I will unmake the world that cages words. Asterisk. The thing that had been my mother reached out, and I saw that its fingers were made of the word erosion, written over and over. Where it touched, stone crumbled, metal rusted, fabric decayed. Thessa, move. Castor shoved me aside and wrote something in the air with his pen, a word I couldn't quite see. It flew toward my mother thing and struck it, causing the letters on its skin to scatter and reorganize. The creature stumbled back, confused. What did you write? I asked. Pause, Castor said. It won't hold long. She's consumed too many concepts. She's becoming something that can't be paused or stopped. Asterisk, clever boy. But words are my domain. I am the library. I am the archive. I am every book ever written. Asterisk. Her form began to expand, growing taller, wider, more words pouring from the shelves around us and flowing into her body. She was absorbing the entire archive, consuming every word in the vault. We have to stop her, I said, or she'll eat all of Scriptoria. Every book, every word, every written thing will be consumed. How do you stop someone who's become the concept of consumption itself? Castor asked. I looked at my hands, still stained with ink from years of eating words. I'd consumed hundreds of concepts: fire, light, speed, strength, dozens of emotions, abstract ideas like justice and mercy. But I'd never consumed an unmade word. Never dared to. Give me your pen, I said. What? Why? You're a blank. You can write words that erase themselves. Write me the word hunger. Let me eat it before she does. Castor's silver eyes widened. That's insane. That word will consume you from the inside. You'll become. I know what I'll become, I interrupted. But at least I'll still be human underneath. At least part of me will remember. If we don't stop her now, there won't be anything left to remember. He hesitated, then pulled out his pen and wrote in the air with quick, decisive strokes. Hunger. The word hung there, pulsing with dark red light. It looked nothing like the simple concepts I'd eaten before. This was primal, fundamental, endless. I opened my mouth and swallowed it whole. Part 3. The taste of forever. Hunger hit me like a wave of acid. Not physical hunger, though that was there too, gnawing at my stomach. This was deeper, existential. The hunger to be more, to have more, to consume more. The hunger that drove evolution, that pushed civilization forward, that made people great and terrible. I understood now why my mother had done this. It felt incredible. Every book in the archive suddenly looked delicious. Every word was a morsel waiting to be tasted. I wanted to eat them all, to consume every written thing until I was everything. Thessa! Castor's voice sounded far away. Are you? I lunged at him, my hand reaching for the notebook in his pocket. So many words there, so many delicious concepts waiting to be consumed. He dodged, writing in the air as he moved. Stop. The word hit me like a wall, freezing me in place. But only for a moment. The hunger ate through his spell, consuming the very concept of stopping. Yes, my mother's voice boomed. Asterisk. Now you understand, daughter. Now you feel what I feel. We are the same. We are hunger eternal. Asterisk. She was right. I could feel it. The connection between us, mother and daughter, both consumed by concepts that consumed us. We were becoming a pair of living voids, black holes that would eat all of Scriptoria's written knowledge. But there was still a part of me, small, getting smaller, but still there, that remembered being Thessa, remembered my mother reading to me as a child, remembered the day she'd taught me my first word, how proud she'd been, how careful. Mom, I said, and my voice sounded more human than hers. I know you're in there. I know you remember. Asterisk. Memory. Yes. I remember everything. Every word ever written. Every story ever told. Too much. Too many. They hunger. They need to be free. Asterisk. They need to be contained, I countered. That's what the archive is for. Not to cage words, but to keep them safe. To keep them from being misused. Asterisk. Safe? Books locked in darkness? Words never spoken? That is not safety. That is death. Asterisk. I stepped closer, fighting the hunger that screamed at me to consume her, to eat all those words she'd absorbed. Then let's write something new, I said. Together. Like we used to. I reached out, not to eat, but to offer my hand. For a moment, the words on her skin stopped crawling. The chaos stilled, and in the blank page of her eyes, I saw a flicker of recognition. Asterisk. Thessa. Asterisk. Her voice was quieter now, less layered, almost human. I'm here, Mom. Come back. We'll figure this out together. Castor stepped forward, his pen ready. I can help, he said quietly. I can write a word that will erase the unmade concepts without erasing her. But she has to want it. She has to choose to let them go. They're so hungry, my mother whispered. Asterisk. The words. They eat and nothing satisfies. Asterisk. I know, I said, feeling the same endless need clawing at my insides. But we're more than hunger. We're more than the words we've eaten. We're still people. Asterisk. Are we? Asterisk. Yes, I said firmly. We are. I squeezed her hand, or the concept of her hand, and felt the words that made up her skin. They were beautiful in their own way. Terrible and beautiful. Let them go, I said. Let Castor erase them. We'll find another way to free the words. A safe way. My mother thing stared at me with those blank page eyes. Then slowly, painfully, she nodded. Castor began to write. Not one word, but 7, each one flowing into the next in a complex sentence that glowed with silver light. I release what was never meant to be held by mortal minds alone forever. The sentence wrapped around my mother like chains of light, and she screamed, not in pain, but in relief. The unmade words tore themselves from her body, 7 dark concepts that writhed in the air like living shadows. Hunger, silence, erosion, plague, vertigo, echo, dissolution. Asterisk, asterisk. They tried to escape, to find new hosts, but Castor was ready. He wrote faster than I'd ever seen anyone write, his pen a blur. Asterisk, these words unmake themselves. These concepts cease. These ideas return to the void from which they should never have emerged. Asterisk. And they did. One by one, the unmade words collapsed in on themselves, erasing their own existence. The air where they'd been shimmered and settled, like reality healing from a wound. My mother collapsed, and I caught her. She was small now, fragile, her skin just skin again. But her eyes were still full of words, too many words, a lifetime of consumption. "Thessa," she whispered, her real voice hoarse from disuse. "I'm sorry. I thought I could control them. I thought I could free all the trapped words without losing myself." "I know," I said, holding her close. "I know." Castor knelt beside us. "The hunger," he said to me. "You still have it inside you. I can erase it, but it will hurt," I finished. He nodded. I looked at my mother, at the shell of what she'd been, looked at the empty vault around us, at all the books still locked away. "Do it," I said. "Erase the hunger. But only from me. My mother. She's consumed too many words over too many years. Taking them away might kill her." "Thessa, no," my mother protested weakly. "You don't have to." "I do," I said. "Someone has to remember this. Someone has to make sure it doesn't happen again. And that someone needs to be human enough to care." Castor wrote, "Hunger departs from she who chooses to feed others instead." The pain was immediate and absolute. The hunger fought back, tried to convince me I needed it, that without it I was nothing. But I held on to the image of my mother reading to me as a child, to the memory of eating my first word and feeling wonder instead of greed. And slowly, the hunger faded. I was left hollow, empty, but myself. Part 4. The New Archive. The council wanted to execute my mother. After what she'd done, after the risk she'd posed, they argued that death was the only solution. I stood before them in the grand chamber, where words of law floated in the air like motes of dust, and made a different proposal. "She's consumed too many words to ever be normal again," I said. "But that doesn't make her useless. It makes her uniquely qualified." "For what?" Council Speaker Marin asked, her voice dripping with skepticism. "For creating a new kind of archive. Not one that locks words away in darkness, but one that teaches people to use them responsibly. My mother has absorbed thousands of concepts. She's a living library. Let her share that knowledge." And how do we trust her not to consume more? Another counselor demanded. You don't, I said bluntly. You trust me. I'll watch her. I'll be her editor, her curator. Every word she teaches, I'll verify. Every concept she shares, I'll monitor. And if she ever tries to consume unmade words again, I looked at Castor, who stood beside me. My partner will erase her. The council deliberated for hours. In the end, fear of wasting such a valuable resource won out over fear of the risk. My mother became the archive keeper, not of the forbidden collection, but of a new institution we called the Living Library, a place where words weren't just stored but taught, where the magic of language was shared instead of hoarded. She taught students how to eat simple words safely, how to incorporate concepts without losing yourself. She showed them the beauty of language, the power of ideas, but also the danger of consuming too much. And I watched over her, making sure the hunger never returned. Castor became my permanent partner. Together, we hunted down rogue ink eaters who'd consumed forbidden words, tracking them through the verbal signatures they left behind. We recovered lost texts, sealed away dangerous concepts, and occasionally, very occasionally, allowed carefully supervised consumption of moderately dangerous words. It wasn't perfect. The temptation was always there, for both me and my mother. The desire to eat just one more word, to understand just one more concept. But we resisted, because we'd learned the hard way that the most important word isn't one you consume. It's one you choose not to. Epilogue, the blank page. 5 years after the incident in the Forbidden Archive, I sat in my office at the Living Library, reviewing a student's request to consume the word courage. Why do you want to eat this word? I asked the young woman across from my desk. Because I'm afraid, she answered honestly. Afraid of everything. I thought if I understood courage, you'd stop being afraid? I shook my head. That's not how it works. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the choice to act despite it. But if I ate the word, I'd know that. I'd feel it. You'd feel what the word means, I corrected. But you wouldn't have earned it. The courage you get from eating a word is borrowed courage. Real courage comes from facing fear with just yourself. No magic. No shortcuts. The student looked disappointed, but nodded. However, I continued, I can teach you a different approach. Instead of eating courage, learn to read it. Study it. Understand it intellectually first. Then, if you still want to consume it after 6 months of study, come back and we'll discuss it. She left, and I marked her file. Asterisk postponed. Shows promise. Asterisk. Castor appeared in my doorway, a rare smile on his face. Your mother wants to see us, he said. She says she's made a discovery. We found her in the deep reading room, surrounded by floating words that orbited her like planets around a sun. She looked old now. Consuming so many concepts had aged her faster than normal, but her eyes were still sharp, still full of that endless curiosity. Look, she said, gesturing to a blank book floating in the center of the room. I've been working on a theory. What if there are words that haven't been written yet? Concepts that exist but have never been named. Unmade words. I asked cautiously. No, she said. Unmade in a different sense. Not forbidden or dangerous, just undiscovered. Languages evolve, ideas emerge. What if we could find these new words and write them down safely? She opened the blank book, and on its first page a word began to form, letters appearing one by one as if writing themselves. Hiraeth. It's a Welsh word, my mother explained, but the concept exists in many cultures. a longing for a home you can't return to, or that never was. Isn't it beautiful? I read the word, feeling its meaning wash over me. Not eating it, just experiencing it. Yes, it was beautiful. So we're explorers now? Castor asked, amused. Discovering new words instead of locking up old ones? Why not? My mother replied. The world is full of unnamed concepts, feelings we don't have words for yet. Imagine a library full of them, a collection of the named. The unnamed, I repeated, testing the phrase. I like it. We spent the evening exploring the concept, writing down words from different languages that didn't exist in common. Words like sordade, Portuguese for a melancholic longing, Mamahlapanatapai, Jagan for a wordless understanding between people, Komaribi, Japanese for sunlight filtering through leaves. Each one was a small treasure, a new way of seeing the world. As we worked, I realized something. This was what the archive was supposed to be. Not a prison for dangerous words, but a garden where language could grow. A place where words were cultivated, not caged. My mother had been right about one thing. Words needed to be free. She'd just gone about it the wrong way. Thank you, I said to her as we closed the blank book, now filled with beautiful new words. For what? For showing me that we don't have to be defined by what we've consumed. We can also be defined by what we choose to create. She smiled, and in that moment, she looked like the mother I remembered from childhood. The one who'd taught me that words were magic, but the real magic was in how you used them. Castor packed up his notebooks, preparing to leave for the night. Same time tomorrow, he asked. Same time tomorrow, I confirmed. We have more words to discover. He paused at the door. You know, Thessa, I've been thinking. There should be a word for what we do. Not ink eaters or scribes or blanks. Something new. What did you have in mind? He thought for a moment, then smiled. Word gardeners. We cultivate language. We help it grow. I laughed. Word gardeners. I love it. After he left, I sat alone in the quiet library, surrounded by books and floating words. The hunger was gone, but I still felt an ache sometimes, a desire to consume, to absorb, to become more than I was. But I'd learned to fill that ache with something better, curiosity, the joy of discovering new words, new concepts, new ways of understanding the world. I pulled out a blank notebook, my own, not enchanted or magical, just ordinary paper, and began to write. Today, I learned that the opposite of hunger isn't satisfaction. It's appreciation. To appreciate what you have instead of always wanting more. To savor instead of consume. There should be a word for that. And maybe, I thought as I closed the notebook, maybe I'd discover that word tomorrow. Or maybe I'd create it myself. In a world where words had power, the most powerful thing wasn't what you ate. It was what you chose to write. The end.